There was a knock at my door. Who could that be? No one knows I'm living in this dump. I've been here almost 2 months, ever since my wife declared she was bored and going on a date. More on that later. She left. I packed my bags and left. She blamed me. If I wasn't so selfish, I would have let her have some fun sometimes. It was just a harmless fling, anyway. I opened the door, and a man around my age, maybe 40, neatly dressed, stood there. "Patrick?" he said, holding a business card in his left hand while offering his right. I fumbled, trying to decide whether to shake his hand, take the card, do both, or neither. I finally laughed, took the card with my left hand, shook his right, and looked at the card. It simply read, "Betrayed Husbands Anonymous" at the top, and printed large in the middle, a name, Eric. "Yeah, Eric, I'm Patrick Foster. And you are?" "Just Eric. You'll understand why if you'll let me in and talk." I laughed. I couldn't help it. My beloved wife, who just 2 months ago wanted a one-time date as a bit of fun, had shacked up with some guy. She filed for divorce, claiming abandonment. Now, some guy shows up and hands me a card claiming he's from a group of betrayed husbands. Okay, Eric, why not? Anything you have to tell me has to be better than any news I've gotten in, ever. Eric came in, and we went to the kitchen table, the best place to sit and talk in my current dilapidated abode. As he sat down, I offered him coffee, which he accepted, and then he asked, "Do you have this morning's paper?" I opened the pantry and grabbed the recycling bin. Right on top was the newspaper. "Here, I think it's slow news day today." He found the local news section and turned to page 2, folded it, and pointed to an article. "Have you read this?" "I don't know. It's about a brutal beating outside the hospital a few days ago. Police have identified the man beaten, a Dr. Edward Scott, as the victim of a random gang attack. He's seriously injured, though the nature of the injuries wasn't disclosed." So what? I was confused. This guy definitely wasn't a betrayed husband. Why was I reading about him? Seems Dr. Scott was living with someone named Roberta River. Gavanby, as everyone calls her, had been married to Mr. River for almost 20 years. River held a mid-level management position. He did pretty well. Dr. Scott, however, is a surgeon. A surgeon? His undisclosed injuries are primarily to his hands and groin. It's highly unlikely he'll ever perform surgery again, either in an operating room or a bedroom, if you catch my drift. I nervously chuckled. That's not hard to understand. Just thinking about it makes my hands hurt. Continue my story. Dr. Scott had a wandering eye focused on Mrs. River. He pursued, and she fell. Eventually, she decided to change her life. She generously left her ex-husband with everything and their 2 children. Well, children isn't entirely accurate. Their daughter is 18 and in college, and their son is 17 and a senior in high school. Sounds like Mr. River got his revenge. That's why I'm here, Patrick. I can assure you that Mr. River had absolutely nothing to do with the beating of Dr. Scott. You're saying you did it? Of course not. The fact is that until this morning I didn't even know of the existence of Scott, the River family, or you. This morning I was given the information I'm sharing with you now and told to come here and share it with you. Who is this guy? I scratched my head and looked at him. Clearly someone was angry with Doc Scott, and it seemed like it was the ex-husband. If he had nothing to do with the beating, why was I being told this? Okay, I give up. I can't solve the puzzle. Eric smiled. Good, you can't. The point is that no one can. As you pointed out, it looks like River got revenge, but River is innocent. No one will be convicted, or even arrested for this attack. Scott's earning potential is now very little, and Miss River was having real trouble before. River will sleep well tonight and has done nothing wrong. May I ask, how do you sleep? Eric paused and looked directly at me. How do I sleep? River sleeps well because he knows he got his revenge, seemingly without personal involvement. Eric was telling me that he could get revenge for me. Eric, let me ask you this. Do you want revenge on your wife? Patrick, and this is also important, I'm not allowed to tell you any details about my life. Absolutely none. It seems to me that this organization is a place to help guys like you and me get revenge on cheating sluts and their lovers. Again, I don't want you to misunderstand. I never said anything like that. I never implied anything like that. If you draw such a conclusion from what I have said, my advice is to keep it secret. Don't ever talk about it to anyone. Yes, this was starting to make sense. This group was people who didn't know each other and somehow led to innocent revenge for me. The basic rules were that no one explicitly stated that's what they were doing. Oh, I get it, Eric. You've explained things pretty clearly. If I want to become a member of, I glanced down at the card, Betrayed Husbands Anonymous. What do? There's a meeting at this address. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another business card with the restaurant name and its address. That's almost 80 miles away. That's where the meeting will be held. It will start promptly at 7 p.m. the day after tomorrow. Are you interested? The group called itself Anonymous. Maybe that was one of the ways they maintained anonymity. Sure, I'll be there. There's a private room in the restaurant. Tell the receptionist that you're a member of the Petri group. When you get to the room, show them the card I gave you and introduce yourself as Eric. He stood up, clearly to leave. Wait, I have about 1,000 questions. I've said what I wanted to say. Thank you and good luck. With that, he smiled and left. For the first time since living alone, I felt excited. A chance at revenge with no risk. This was like a power-amplified chain letter. Clearly, if anyone asked who brought me into the group, I could only say Eric. Now, since I am Eric, I don't even know if that's his name. It seems that as I go on, I'll receive more guidance and information, eventually culminating in a bonfire with my ex-wife in the middle. Does that mean at some point, I'll need to build and light bonfires for others? Even with no chance of getting caught, can I cripple a surgeon I've never met? Revenge without getting caught is still not without regret. I had some thinking to do. I needed to know more about my wife's plans. Judy, my wife, had come to the office on a Friday evening, all dressed up for a night out. I'd only been home a few minutes and wondered why I didn't smell any cooking. She announced she was going on a date. An argument ensued, tires squealed, and she was gone. I decided I wasn't going to be made a fool of, packed my bags, and left. I found a crummy one-bedroom apartment I could rent by the month. Crappy as it is, I bet I could rent it by the minute. Being an honorable guy, I know I still have to pay the rent. Knowing how well men do in divorces, I stashed away all the money I could. I searched for a private investigator and found a couple here in town. I called one and described what I needed. My wife is currently living in our house with a guy driving a blue Toyota. Find out who he is and what he does. It would cost very little to get that information. Now, I have a day and a half to think about what kind of revenge I want and what I'm willing to do to get it. Somehow, things are easier when the law prevents me from seeking revenge. No matter how safe, I can't cripple someone for life. That's not in me. I entered the restaurant and asked for the Petri party. I wondered if it was reminiscent of a pity party. I was led to a room with 4 tables, each with 6 chairs. The room was only half full. They looked up, offered a greeting, and then looked away. Clearly, we weren't meant to be friends. A man approached. Hello, I'm Jonah. We shook hands. Hi, Jonah. I'm Eric. Oh, Eric. Let's see, you're at table 3, he pointed at the end. Gavin hasn't arrived yet. He'll introduce himself when he gets here. Jonah walked away, and I went to my seat. I checked my watch. It was 6:55. Just then, 3 waiters arrived carrying trays. They set out a variety of sandwiches, salads, and drinks on a table along the wall. Jonah said, "Help yourselves." I grabbed some food and a drink and returned to my seat. As I got back to my seat, the chair to my right was occupied. Hello, I'm Gavin. Hi, Gavin, I'm Eric. Eric, my role here tonight is to explain what will happen. The first thing that will happen, after we eat, is one of us will share their story. I want you to pay particular attention to what he says. These presentations have a specific format. Someday you will be asked to give a similar presentation. When will I be asked to do this? Eric, all of this may seem a bit confusing. You've been given information. The information was provided for a reason, and although it may be unpleasant to go through, as you're asked to do various things, I assure you that you will never be asked to do anything that would cause you to stop. Gavin, I'm worried. A man came to my apartment. Eric, I want you to put that thought aside. One of the absolutely necessary things in our process is anonymity. You must never share any part of this process with anyone. Let me put this forward. You're concerned that you'll be asked to do something outside of your moral code. I can't guarantee you won't be asked, but I can guarantee that you will never be required to do anything you're not comfortable doing. Oh, here we go. The presentation is about to begin. A man stood up, walked to the front of the room, and announced, "Hello everyone, my name is Kelvin." Everyone responded, "Hello, Kelvin." I want to tell you my story. I'm 46 years old. I've been married for 24 years. Just before our 25th wedding anniversary, I came home and found my wife and my brother in bed together. They've been lovers for years. We have 3 children. The oldest and youngest are mine. The middle one is my brother's. We have a family business. It's still run by my father. My father has always favored my brother. I told the family that I would no longer be a part of any business that included my brother. Basically, I was told not to let the door hit me in the butt on the way out. I'm currently trying to build a business competing against my own family. My brother is sabotaging me for his own amusement. My ex-wife and brother are about to get married. My children are turning their backs on me. Kelvin paused and took a sip of water from a bottle. Then, continuing, what I wish is that my father could be convinced to listen to what's really happening. I wish he could force himself to see my brother's betrayal, bleeding his business dry. Thank you for listening. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. As soon as he sat down, the room buzzed with people talking in pairs. In my case, Gavin spoke to me. May I ask what you heard? Kelvin didn't mention any names. He talked about a business, but didn't tell me what business it was. He was totally vague. Good. At least partially good. Gavin looked at me, considering his next statement. Did Kelvin make any requests? I understood. No, he didn't make any requests. He did say that he wished his father would listen and find out what was going on. Would you call his wish vague? No, it was pretty specific. Do you think this leads to any violent or illegal actions? I just smiled. No answer needed. I decided to say that's also a wish, not a request. Kelvin didn't ask anyone for anything. There will be a meeting in 2 weeks and another in a month. Would you be ready to give a presentation at one of those meetings? I thought about the PI and his report. I would get it in a week. Depending on what it contained, I'd need to figure out what I should wish for. Gavin, it would be safer to ask for a month. What if I'm not ready in that month? You simply attend the meeting and report when you're ready to present. So, I'll be here in a month. Gavin smiled. No. He gave me the location and time of the next meeting along with his business card. I was about 80 miles east of home. The next meeting was in a small town about 50 miles northwest. The meeting was at a diner at 2 p.m. I bet we'll be the only ones there. The final thing we did was Gavin handing me his business card. Introduce yourself as Gavin. I drove home trying to figure it all out. It was easy, and then impossible. Some of us paired people up at different points in this process. The meetings were held all over the place, apparently. We were all sent to different cities and used aliases. No one knew anyone else, didn't even know where they lived. So we could all come up with our revenge ideas and tell the group? But then what? I could do what Gavin or Jonah did. I certainly would. But they told me I wouldn't be asked to do anything illegal, so I wouldn't be asked to harm anyone. It seemed today's requests involved looking at the books of some mystery company. Not illegal, but I couldn't look at them or know what I saw if I did. A large part was missing. Life might have been very different. In most every way, Sean's life ended that night. He came home to find his wife in bed with some guy. She should have known better. Sean's business was drugs, sex, gambling, and making sure his company didn't have competition. Mostly, he prevented competition by explaining the consequences to potential rivals. Sometimes, they requested small demonstrations of his potential sincerity. Other times, of course, he had to actually deliver the consequences. The nice part of that was no one needed a second lesson about consequences. The first lesson was the end. Sean couldn't believe his eyes. His stupid wife knew what he would do, and now he was forced to do it. He reached for his gun but decided these two needed to be punished first. He tossed the man aside and beat his wife, rendering her unconscious. He turned his attention to the naked man who was trying to get up. He never would. Sean was in the process of beating, kicking, stomping, gouging, and destroying his wife's lover. He was extremely angry, but a true professional. He was taking his time. Like a mouse caught by a cat, the lover endured a long day, his last day. Sean heard a gunshot behind him, felt a sharp pain, collapsed, and lost consciousness. He woke up in a hospital bed, his hands cuffed to the bed. He found himself charged with murder and assault. When his wife came to, shot him, called 911, and got a response, her lover was dead from internal injuries. Sean was a very wealthy man. He had a good lawyer, pleaded temporary insanity, and was sentenced to 7 to 10 years for manslaughter. He was a model prisoner and was released after 7. He was full of rage. He had a prenuptial agreement and his divorce cost him nothing beyond lawyer fees. He ruined the cheating hussy financially, killed her lover, and was extremely disappointed that he hadn't done more. He had been warned that if anything happened to her, he'd face life in prison. He decided he'd abandon any further revenge until he figured out a foolproof way to achieve it. Sean needed revenge. As he thought about it, who he took revenge on wasn't as important as taking revenge. One cheating slut was the same as any other. The men who helped them betray their husbands deserved the same fate. Sean could continue taking revenge, and as long as he was revenging other people, who also deserved it, he'd never be caught. Eventually, he founded Betrayed Husbands Anonymous. Sean was the perfect link between those who wanted revenge and those who could deliver it. He began developing the means by which the two sides could interact but never meet. The private investigator's report had arrived. My wife's fling was with a guy from her office. Her definition of a fling must be that this is the only time she would tell me anything about it. She and Bozo were in love, and she was planning to leave me and marry him. Her plan showed thought, not good thought, and not much thought, but thought, all the same. She told me she was going out to provoke me. She was sure I would leave. Once I left, she could deny going out and file for divorce on the grounds that I abandoned her. The downside to this idea was she and her lover could be recognized by at least 3 hotel receptionists on site. Her company didn't have any policies regarding married people engaging at the workplace. How would I get revenge? I'm not tied to this area. My parents retired to Florida, almost 1,000 miles away. I could quit my job and disappear. But first, I needed her to be single, with no good prospects, and preferably unemployed. Her current love was a cheater. Certainly we could get him to cheat. Perhaps we could find a beautiful woman at a free clinic, who has a few unpleasant diseases, and lure her to seduce him. I like that. Simple, but almost certain to make them both angry with each other. If that became public, or they shared it with other co-workers, it might get them fired. Easy to think how to do it. What's that saying? Go big or go home? Why should I limit what I want? If they can't do it, they can tell me. I was ready to tell my story, with 2 days to go. I arrived at the diner. It was an old house, renovated. You entered what had once been a dining room and common area. There was a counter. A man, probably a local, sat there with a cup of coffee. A wide set of double doors opened into another room, perhaps a bedroom in the past. Maybe a dozen men sat within. I walked in. A man stood and approached. "Hello, I'm Gavin," I told him. He didn't bother giving me his alias, he just pointed to an empty table and told me to sit. I sat, and was met by Eric. "Hello, I'm Eric." "Oh great," I thought, "we've gone through the name list." "Hi Eric, Gavin." He didn't have much to say, neither did I. Before long, it was my turn to stand and tell my story. "Hello, I'm Gavin." The group offered a rather unenthusiastic, "Hello, Gavin. Let me share with you what happened to me. I was married to a cheating slut. I was too dumb to know it. One night, she came to me and announced she was going on a date, just a fling. She knew I'd walk away. I did, and she filed for divorce claiming abandonment. She and her fling have been living together in local motels for months. I'm all settled now. The divorce will be finalized soon. She and her ex-fling are living in my old house. You know what? This is what I wish for. He's a cheat, he'll cheat again. It would be fantastic if someone approached him, seduced him, and gave him a few particularly nasty diseases. It would be even better if it shamed them publicly and cost them their jobs, their public figures. Then I can get up and leave. My profession will allow me to find employment. I want my hometown in the rearview mirror and a fresh start. Thank you for listening. I sat down. Eric looked at me and smiled. Believe it or not, when it comes to wishes, I've heard more ambitious ones. So, what's next? Should I find some hooker to help me with this idea? No, let me be clear. You expressed your wish here this afternoon. I never want you to think about it again. It's never going to happen. Your trip here is purely a product of your imagination. If anything happens to your wife and her new fling, it will be purely coincidental. You will be able to look anyone in the eye and tell them you know absolutely nothing about anything that happens. I can do that. Now, let me tell you about membership in this organization. Membership fees vary. Sometimes people have violent or inappropriate wishes. They end up having to engage in some violent behavior. We don't have a free lunch. In your case, we will require you to pay $2,500 for your one-time membership fee. He handed me a shoebox. The next meeting you attend, you will have exactly $2,500 in this box. No one counts. Can you afford it? Do I have a choice? Certainly, we are flexible. You have 2 more meetings as a member. The next meeting, you pay your membership fee. The next meeting, you receive a box like this. After leaving the meeting, you will open the box. On top, you'll find detailed instructions on what to do with the box. The rest of the box is covered. Under no circumstances are you to look and see what is under that covering. So I never know what the request in the box is. Gavin, we have all sorts in this organization. Most are obsessed and unstable. You, like me, have shown you don't talk to anyone. You can be trusted. There are 2 kinds of people in this organization, victims and victors. Depending on the wish being fulfilled, some of these victors aren't nice people. Great, I'll be handing a box of money to a criminal. Gavin, stop it. You won't be doing that. You'll be giving the shoebox to a stranger. Right. What are my chances of survival? You will wrap the shoebox in bright green wrapping paper. Your instructions will include sitting at a post office or bus station when there are a lot of people around. A man will approach you and ask if that's the package for Aunt Mildred, or something like that. I guess you'll survive. Eric, you said there was flexibility in my dues. You pay $2,500, and that covers delivery. With each subsequent delivery, you get a $500 discount. Seems like a lot for a low-risk birthing. We find that many of our members are not involved in violence, not even delivering a shoebox that might contain violent or non-violent requests. They pay to avoid that exchange. Aren't you afraid someone will get caught and rat us out? Rat who out, Gavin? All you know about me is that my name is Eric. He chuckled at his own cleverness. He doesn't know where I live, what I do, and there's nothing to use to trace any of us. What if the local sheriff happened to walk into our meeting? So what? What does he see? A bunch of guys talking to other guys about marital problems. He might find it odd that he's never seen any of us before. He might ask the owner who arranged the meeting. What will that get him? I'm sure the person who arranged this is long gone and never coming back. It was almost as ironclad as I could devise. Certainly I couldn't tell anyone about my role in anything. I'd attend a couple of meetings in different cities, give a presentation, give a guy a shoebox, receive a shoebox and deliver it. Someone had been very careful designing a system that allowed people to get revenge without participating in the planning or execution of that revenge. But revenge doesn't naturally fall and hit someone. Whoever it is, or whether I know who it is or not, someone had to plan and execute this revenge. How was that done? I wrestled with that thought on the drive home. As I parked, I decided that, for me, it was just as well to assume that revenge actually fell from trees. Why would I want to know more than that? I gathered the money. I decided to give them the $2,500. I had the money in the account, and drawing cash from the common fund was a good thing. The ex-wife could pay half. That seemed fair. Another meeting on a different day of the week, in a different city, at a different time. I had a new identity and sought another. I didn't meet anyone I knew, didn't know what was going on. It was comfortable. Everything fell into place as it should. I was finishing my sandwich when Patrick stood to speak. He said, "Hello," we said hello, and he began his story. I was married, my wife has 3 children, all conceived during our time together. I'm the father of the middle one. The only thing my children have in common is their mother, each having a different father. Look, my wife insists she only slept with 2 other men, once each, during our marriage. I'm pretty sure she'd deny that if you could detect pregnancies on a public toilet seat. I've been told I can't be too specific here, but we need to find a match for one of the children. My wife isn't a match, and the children have no other blood relatives that we know of. Although my wife only slept with 3 men in 18 years, she seems to have forgotten the names of the other 2. Patrick stiffened. His eyes welled up, and he paused. The possibility that a beautiful child who has never done anything to anyone will die because it was born to a mother who doesn't even know the names of the potential fathers. What saddens me is that the bitch has a good chance of winning custody in a divorce. My wish is conditional. If the child dies, it will be a painful and horrible life for an innocent. I hope my wife dies just as horribly, such as being chained to a bed in a foreign brothel. If the child lives, I will ensure that we take good care of the children until the last one is 18. Patrick's eyes chilled me. They were hard, resolute, and completely vacant, devoid of any emotion. If I were judging his character, his wife would be better off in a brothel than with Patrick for another few years. My contact asked about my shoebox. Is it full? If I may ask. Completely. That's what we expected. Wait. I'm wondering what's going on. It fulfills my needs, so I don't ask. What we expected says that some of you are running this, and that scares me. Why, may I ask? So much happens in my little world, every day. Too much of it is stuff I don't want to know, let alone be a part of. Now, I'm not such a hypocrite that just because a sorry antisocial like our speaker has made a wish that may well be fulfilled, that I'm not attached to him, but I'm closer than I'd like to be. You're afraid you're an accomplice? I shook my head. No, not exactly. I don't know if Patrick is a figment, actually has a wife, etc. I'll never know what happens to her if she even exists. You, on the other hand, are a different story. Why worry about me? He was starting to annoy me. This coy act was wearing thin, clearly. I've reached the end of the betrayed husband's road. Now, you need some or all of us to join the support group or whatever you call it. They were right about you. You can afford it. I glared at him and said, as sarcastically as possible, need what? I have it, and you were right to say I did? He leaned back and laughed. That. He paused for a moment and then continued. You're intelligent, quiet, perceptive, and thoughtful. Those are all necessary qualities. Of course you are correct. There are two halves to this organization. I'll call them victims and victors. I looked at him. That didn't sound right. The opposite of a victim isn't necessarily a victor, is it? Winners and losers. He paused to gauge if I agreed with him. Between a married couple, one is the victim, the other the victor. Our group doesn't deal with the betrayed, but we call them victors anyway. Also, this is becoming a large group, many people involved. We have a group that finds betrayed husbands, a group that arranges meetings, a group that plans, and a group that executes the mostly legal revenge. You raise more questions than you answer. I've paid a lot of money, but it's a pittance compared to the operation you describe. Are all these people volunteers? I've never thought about it. I can't tell you much because I don't know much. Everyone I know is a volunteer. I know there are some who aren't volunteers, but who and how many I don't know. Sean's pre-prison life had yielded a personal fortune. He was happy to spend a portion of that fortune on revenging the wrongs of cheating wives. His idea of a support group was brilliant. There were plenty of husbands who wanted revenge but lacked the ability or the guts to carry it out. There were also plenty of criminals, addicts, and other malcontents who carried out crimes. The hard part was finding the planners to be executed. A hungry criminal would do anything for money, but not very well. Another thing Sean excelled at was planning. He decided the way to provide his support group with an endless supply of thugs and henchmen was to establish a legitimate business that, in turn, could carry out various and nefarious tasks. Sean found a couple of partners and formed Bright Edge Capital, ostensibly to provide venture capital to emerging tech companies. Sean's two partners were bright young guys who needed capital themselves to get started. Sean provided all the money to own 40%. His partners held 30% each. They thought it was a great deal. They were partners and held 60% of the voting power. They had no problem with Sean running his little skunk works on the side. At weekly partnership meetings, Sean was helpful to the two entrepreneurs who tended to get overly excited about some concepts with no real chance of making money. They were also very helpful to Sean, paying almost no attention to anything his skunk works was doing. It was a perfect arrangement with a dark, shadowy side unknown to most. One legitimate business the skunk works handled was a multi-city detective agency. The revenge operation would need private investigators who could also work for others. The second business Sean established was perfect project planning. Plenty of small businesses needed temporary help to build new offices, install major office equipment, set up accounting systems, and many similar tasks. Perfect also paid the people who planned the revenge. Sean's partners had almost talked him out of his current plan until he assured them he would still attend weekly partnership meetings. Sean claimed he was bored and wanted a real job. He wanted to run a local office of Perfect Project. So, in addition to being on Perfect's board of directors and the de facto CEO, he was a second-tier executive working 300 miles from Perfect's central office. Sean found a former Bay member who was an accountant. The accountant's wish involved a parking lot robbery gone bad. His ex-wife's new husband had been shot and killed in the robbery. The robbers escaped with $47. Like Sean, the accountant was remorseless and newly found a craving to help others. Sean had an accounting system that would launder his own money and cash from the support group to go along with regular business payments, so his office produced a small profit each month. The accountant quickly pointed out to Sean that Perfect would need to hire women. Failing to do so would get them slapped down by the equal opportunity people. So the office where Perfect was headquartered did the legitimate work, with a balanced workforce, and the BAYA work, done only by men, was done from a separate office. The men working there were contractors, not Perfect employees. Every presentation by every betrayed husband's anonymous member was recorded. The recording was given to one of Perfect's project planners. His role was to make the wishes come true. Almost all of the contract employees in Sean's Perfect branch were former BAYA members. They provided several services, arranging meeting times and locations, recruiting new members, adding members to Perfect's advisory team, and planning the fulfillment of all wishes. There was a knock at the door. A man stood there holding a business card. The business card was for betrayed husbands, and the name in the middle was Eric. The man handed me the card saying, "You can call me Sean." Author's note: this is the founder, Sean, although he will lie about this. That's a new twist. Usually a man hands me a business card, and the same name and I know represents nothing. Now, you hand me a different name than the business card, which I believe is yours. They told me you were very smart. May I come in? Certainly, Sean. I've been wondering who would approach me and when. I guess I drew the short straw and they sent me. May I ask who they are? I said with air quotes. Sure, but I'm not allowed to reveal information about the people I work for. Okay, Sean, tell me, why are you here? I offered him my warmest smile. I didn't want to discourage him. First, I have some news. The company where your wife works is about to have a major shakeup. They haven't had ethics clauses for a while because the man running this part of the organization is unethical. Turns out he's about to get a visit from an angry wife who has some particularly nasty STDs. I hope he didn't get them from my soon-to-be ex-wife. I laughed. You'll find this interesting. His wife didn't want to sit idly by and pretend she didn't know about his affair and decided to make some money herself. Being a newbie, she got sick and gave it to her husband. Her boyfriend turns out to be the man your wife was having an affair with. He got infected by someone who seduced him, oddly enough, just as you wished. From there, it's not clear. He, of course, slept with your wife and the boss's wife. Your wife also slept with the boss. So you'll need the timing information, and don't know what else to truly know who gave who what. But the wife, not being a fool, blamed her cheating husband, who in turn blamed your wife. Oh, sweet. I couldn't be happier. Sounds like she's the victim in this and ends up shouldering the shame of the villain. I'm sure her boyfriend won't willingly sleep with the boss's wife. I couldn't contain my glee. Gosh, I feel bad for her. Sean smiled too. Yes, I see you're suffering. Perhaps in time you'll get over it. Okay, I hope not, but let's see. Unfortunately, it's worse for her. The wife is the daughter of a former executive at the company. She's complained to company headquarters, and they're all going to lose their jobs. It will take a few weeks for the company to find replacements, so this mass firing isn't known by anyone locally. This is a perfect time for you to quit and disappear. Oh, I've wanted to be independent for a long time. But I don't know how I could do that. I'd have to get settled in a strange city. That could take years. Even better news. I'm a mid-level manager in a company, Perfect Project Planning. I have certain freedoms. The owners don't pay attention to what I do, only care about the revenue I generate. I can offer you a job. Some of the work you'll do will be for Perfect. Some of the work you'll do will be for Betrayed Husbands Anonymous, but paid for by Perfect, and some of the work you'll do will be for yourself and paid for by Perfect. Sean. Frankly, I don't want to be involved in criminal activity. The guy I met the other day wants his wife to die in a foreign brothel. I can't say whether she deserves such a fate, but I can't be the one to sentence her to it. You don't need to worry about that. Our part of the winners isn't involved in anything illegal. Well, that's not 100% true. Your wish was for people to get STDs. Turns out they did. If someone did something to cause that, I suspect that's a crime. I can live with that. One possibility is going to a free clinic and giving a pretty young woman some money to get revenge for what her cheating boyfriend did to her. Who she tells and what she says? Exactly. Sean looked as if he was going to add his usual disclaimer, but he skipped it. I've been informed that you're a planner. If you come and work for Perfect, you'll have the resources to help you. If you're asked to do something you're not comfortable with, refuse. I'll be your boss. I guarantee I'll support you. How much time can I dedicate to my new business? Initially, for the first 3 months, 10 hours a week plus any hours over 40. Then a quarter time of 20, then 30. I can't predict, and neither can you, how successful your new endeavor will be. You may want to separate from Perfect or maintain some kind of profit-sharing arrangement. You and I will work that out. So you'll own part of my business. I didn't like that. No, unless you want to remain part of Perfect Planning. If you do, we'll work it out. If not, you can go your own way. Why should I stay? 2 reasons. First, you might enjoy helping people like you, who've been betrayed but have no way to get revenge. Second, Perfect provides many client services. You might enjoy that work more. More likely, I will. Oh, I almost forgot. I have another story for you. Sean sat up straight. Clearly, he enjoyed the story he was about to tell. You may remember hearing about a guy who found out his brother was sleeping with his wife. He lost his wife, his children turned their backs on him, and his father sided with his brother. The poor guy just wanted his father to see that he'd been wronged. Of course I remember. Their small business was pretty good, worth about $5 to $6 million. My guy got offer of $11 million on condition that the company withstand a private audit. Of course he greedily agreed. The auditor said the company was too risky and pointed out almost $500,000 in embezzlement. Let me guess, the brother. Yes, and he'd use that money to do things like seduce our member's wife and 6 or 7 others. He also hid gambling debts. His father was furious. The brother swore he didn't do any of that. Now his father knows he's a liar and a thief. Both are characteristics he won't accept. Our guy must be thrilled. Sean shook his head. I'll be honest with you. I don't like the ending here. But our member liked it, so that matters more. The audit showed our guy was the main reason the company was successful. And his brother not only limited success by stealing from his family, but blamed our guy. The father fired and disowned his formerly favorite son and begged the other one's forgiveness. What's not to like? The brother can't support his wife anymore. She wants to go back to her husband, and he took her and the kids back. Personally, I think he's thrilled to have beaten his brother. Finally, he's let go of her past sins. Maybe he did it for the kids and will leave her later. Maybe. But the important thing is that he got what he wanted. He didn't get what I wanted, but he wasn't trying to please me. What about the guy who wants his wife in a brothel? You really want to know, I can tell you. No, I think not. Your choice. So what do you think? I had one final meeting. I took my box and delivered it. I worried about it, but it turned out to be a completely uneventful event. Oh, I should say, I attended that final meeting from my new hometown. I got the job and moved from that crummy apartment into a nice house. I had my lawyer work things out with my wife. She got half of our current assets and no continuing support. Both of us are unemployed if asked. My boss is willing to say that he's never heard of me. He's never been asked. I suspect she doesn't have the resources to look for me. It's only been a few months, but I love everything about my life right now. I have no trouble finding women who are looking for a good man, and I'm sure if I'm patient, I'll find the right one soon.